Tea started as a simple trip, a weekend getaway to Atchison, Kansas, a small town with a big reputation for the paranormal. I wasn't a believer. Ghost stories were just that, stories. But my best friend, Chris, had convinced me to check out the infamous Sallie House, a place known for violent hauntings. It's all hype, I had said, laughing as we drove into town. Then prove it, Chris challenged. Spend the night inside. I should have said no. I should have turned the car around. Instead, I stepped into the house that would change my life forever. The Sallie House looked ordinary. A white, two-story home on a quiet street. Nothing like the looming haunted mansions in horror movies. The only thing off was the eerie silence that seemed to hang over the neighborhood. No kids playing, no cars driving by. Just stillness. The owner met us at the door. She was an older woman, thin and tired-looking, like someone who hadn't slept in years. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked, peering at me. "Of course," I said, forcing a grin. "It's just one night." She exhaled slowly. "You can leave at any time. But if something feels wrong, trust your gut." Her warning felt dramatic at the time. But now, I wish I had listened. The first few hours were uneventful. We explored the house, recording everything with our phones. The furniture was sparse, but the air felt heavy, like stepping into a place where something unseen was watching. The nursery upstairs was the creepiest room, tiny, with peeling wallpaper and an old, cracked doll on a chair in the corner. Chris laughed, saying it looked like a horror movie prop. "Hello, Sallie," he called mockingly. "Come out and play." I didn't laugh. The second he spoke, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. In August, a sharp scratching sound echoed from the walls. Chris froze. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. No answer, but something moved in the shadows. We tried to brush it off as old pipes or settling wood, but the atmosphere felt wrong. Chris, always the skeptic, went to the kitchen for a beer, leaving me alone in the nursery. The scratching sound returned. Louder. Closer. I stepped toward the chair with the doll, my pulse hammering. My fingers shook as I reached out to touch it. Then something clawed my back. I gasped in pain, stumbling forward. My shirt was torn. 3 long, burning scratches ran down my spine. Chris ran in at my scream. His face drained of color. "We need to get out of here." We grabbed our bags, bolting for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. A child's giggle echoed from the nursery. The lights flickered. Shadows crawled along the walls. Then we saw her. A little girl. Dark eyes. Bloody hands. Standing in the doorway, smiling. She whispered one word. "Stay." We didn't argue. We ran, crashing through the door and sprinting to the car. I didn't even realize I was bleeding until we were halfway back to the hotel. The scratches? Still there the next morning. But the worst part? Chris woke up with them too. Neither of us had slept. We didn't talk about it. We didn't tell anyone. But at 3 a.m. that night, my phone buzzed with a text from Chris. "She's here." I never heard from him again. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear her giggle. I never believed in ghosts. That changed after one night at the Eldridge Hotel. It was supposed to be a quick work trip to Lawrence, Kansas. The company booked my stay at the Eldridge, a historic landmark known for its rich past and its paranormal reputation. But I wasn't worried. Hotels with ghost stories are just marketing gimmicks, right? I checked in late, exhausted from my flight. The lobby was elegant, grand chandeliers casting warm light over polished wood floors. A bellhop greeted me with a polite smile as he grabbed my bag. "First time staying here?" he asked. "Yeah, looks nice." He hesitated, then gave a tight-lipped smile. "Room 506. Interesting choice." "Why?" I asked. He just shook his head. "You'll see." I should have known then something was wrong. The elevator ride was silent. I stepped into the dimly lit hallway of the 5th floor, eerily empty despite the hotel being fully booked. My room, 506, was at the very end. The second I opened the door, a strange heaviness settled over me. The room was pristine, fresh sheets, neatly folded towels, but the air was thick, almost suffocating. It smelled faintly of old wood, and something else, something metallic. I dismissed it, chalking it up to exhaustion. After a long shower, I collapsed onto the bed, ready to pass out. But then the knocking started. soft at first. Just 3 slow taps. I groaned, rolling over. Probably a drunk guest at the wrong door. Then it happened again. 3 knocks. Louder. I sat up, heart pounding. I checked the peephole. No one was there. A shiver crawled up my spine. "It's just my imagination," I muttered. I turned off the light, pulled the covers over me, closed my eyes. That's when the whispering started. It was faint at first, like a distant radio signal. But then it grew louder, a chorus of voices overlapping, murmuring words I couldn't understand. My skin prickled as I turned on the lamp, scanning the empty room. The whispering stopped, but then the closet door creaked open. I froze. The door had been shut. I was sure of it. A gust of ice-cold air seeped from the darkness inside. I reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight, but before I could, bang, the bathroom door slammed shut on its own. I jumped out of bed, my pulse hammering. The room felt smaller, the air thick with something unseen. I grabbed my bag, ready to leave. Then I saw it. A shadow standing in the corner. Tall, motionless, featureless. It didn't move, but I swear to God, I could feel it watching me. I bolted for the door, but my body suddenly locked in place, like an invisible force had grabbed me. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. Then, in a voice that wasn't mine, I whispered, "This is my room." I don't remember what happened next. The next thing I knew, I was outside, breathless, standing in the hotel lobby. The bellhop from earlier saw me and didn't even look surprised. "Room 506, he asked. I nodded, still shaking. "Yeah, people don't last long in there." I checked out immediately. I don't know what happened that night, but when I got home, I found something in my suitcase. A key card for room 506. I never took it. I never packed it, but somehow it followed me home. And every so often, just before I fall asleep, I hear the knocking. 3 slow taps. I should have never gone to Stull Cemetery. People say it's one of the 7 gateways to hell, a place where the dead don't rest and the living aren't welcome. But I didn't believe in that. It was just an old graveyard outside Stull, Kansas. Then one night, my friend Eric convinced me to check it out. "Just for fun," he said. "We'll take some pictures, see if we catch anything weird." I should have said no. It was past midnight when we arrived. The road leading to the cemetery was pitch black, the headlights barely cutting through the thick fog that clung to the ground. The entrance was blocked by a rusted gate. A warning sign dangled from the bars. "No trespassing after dark." We ignored it. Eric pushed the gate open, and it let out a long, metallic groan. The air inside the cemetery was thick and heavy, pressing down on me like an unseen force. Gravestones stretched in every direction, some so old the names were completely worn away. A dead tree stood near the center, its branches twisted like skeletal fingers. At its base, the remains of a burned-down church sat in eerie silence. Legend says that inside, there was once a staircase that led directly to hell. "Creepy as hell," Eric muttered, snapping pictures with his phone. That's when I saw them. The lights. At first, they were just faint orbs, floating between the graves like fireflies. But as we moved deeper into the cemetery, they grew brighter. I pulled out my phone to record, but my screen glitched, static and distortion crawling across the display. Then from behind me, I heard Eric whisper, "Dude, do you see that?" I turned. In the distance, beyond the graves, figures stood in the fog. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. My breath caught in my throat. My instincts screamed at me to run. But before I could react, the church door slammed shut. A guttural growl rose from beneath the ground. The air shifted, suddenly thick with the scent of burnt wood and decay. The ground rumbled beneath our feet, and then the screams started. They came from every direction, echoing through the cemetery, inhuman and tortured. The lights flickered wildly, twisting into shadowy figures that darted between the gravestones. Eric grabbed my arm. "We have to go. Now." We sprinted for the gate. The figures in the fog moved, chasing us, their hollow whispers turning to shrieks. Something grabbed my ankle. I hit the ground hard, pain exploding through my knee. I kicked wildly, my foot connecting with nothing. Eric pulled me up, and we ran, nearly tripping over graves in our desperation to escape. We didn't stop until we were back in the car. As I slammed the door shut, I dared to look back at the cemetery. Through the iron gate, I saw them, hooded figures, standing in a circle, and at their center, something dark was rising from the ground. Then, in the back seat of the car, my phone buzzed. A notification. One new photo. I didn't take it. With shaking hands, I opened the gallery. It was a picture of me and Eric, standing at the gate. But behind us, a face stared back, pale, hollow, smiling, and in the reflection of its eyes, the staircase, leading down, waiting. I was driving alone through Kansas when I first heard about Devil's Road, a long, desolate stretch of highway just outside of Wichita, known for strange lights, missing travelers, and an unnerving legend. A phantom black car that appears from nowhere, chasing drivers until they disappear. I didn't believe it, not until I found myself on that road. And it found me. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., when my GPS rerouted me onto a back road. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another quiet highway, empty and endless, the asphalt stretching forward into the darkness. The only light came from my headlights and the full moon hanging low in the sky. The air was heavy, thick with humidity, and the trees lining the road swayed as if whispering some unseen warning. That's when I noticed the temperature dropping. I glanced at my dashboard. 48 degrees. Impossible, it had been 80 just 10 minutes ago. A shiver ran down my spine. I gripped the wheel tighter. Then, in my rearview mirror, I saw the headlights. At first, they were distant, just two small glowing orbs in the dark. But then they got closer, fast. I blinked. There had been no turn-offs, no intersections. That car hadn't been behind me a second ago. The lights blinded my mirror, filling my car with an eerie white glow. The engine of the vehicle behind me was silent. I couldn't hear tires on pavement, no sound of an engine revving. Just the overwhelming feeling that something wasn't right. I sped up. So did it. I hit 70 miles per hour. The car behind me matched my speed instantly, its headlights never flickering, never shifting. I tried to see the driver, but the glare was too strong. The car itself looked wrong. The headlights were too bright, like they weren't just illuminating the road, they were consuming it. Then my radio crackled to life. Static. Then a voice. Deep, distorted, broken. Turn back. I slammed my foot on the gas. 80, 90. The road blurred beneath me, my heart hammering. The car stayed right behind me, never falling back, never pulling forward. The light felt like it was pressing into my skull, drowning out everything else. Then, the road disappeared. For a brief moment, I was floating, suspended in total darkness. No road, no trees, just an endless black void stretching forever in all directions. The only thing that existed was me and the car. My stomach lurched as the road suddenly snapped back into place. I was still driving, still alive, but my knuckles were white against the wheel, my breath coming in ragged gasps. And just like that, the car was gone. No headlights, no taillights, no trace it had ever been there. The temperature on my dashboard blinked. 112 degrees. I pulled over, my hands shaking. My tires were burning hot against the pavement, but the air outside was ice cold. Then I saw the sign, "Welcome to Devil's Road," and beneath it, carved into the metal, as if done by fingernails, "You can never leave." I never believed in the Wichita Troll, a local urban legend, just another ghost story people tell to scare kids. The kind of thing you hear about in whispers, passed down through generations. Supposedly, something lived beneath the city, in the labyrinth of old tunnels and drainage systems running under Wichita. A creature with glowing eyes, watching from the darkness. People said it wasn't human. People said it wasn't alone. I didn't believe it. Not until the night I heard the scratching beneath my apartment. It started with the drains. Late at night, I would hear scraping noises coming from the pipes, like fingernails dragging against metal. At first, I assumed it was rats. Then the noises became deliberate, rhythmic, like something was trying to communicate. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom sink gurgled. A small burst of filthy water bubbled up from the drain. And then, something laughed. I froze. The sound was wrong. Not quite human, not quite animal. A low, guttural chuckle, distorted and echoing. I backed away, my breath catching in my throat. The bathroom light flickered. Then the water drained away, disappearing into the pipes with a sickening gurgle. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told my friend Nate about it. "Dude, you know about the tunnels, right?" he asked. "What tunnels?" He pulled out his phone, showing me an old map of Wichita. Back in the early 1900s, they built underground drainage tunnels all over the city. Some of them are still there, but they're abandoned now. "And?" I asked, still not understanding. Nate's expression darkened. "There are stories about people going down there and not coming back." I scoffed. "Come on, man. It's just some urban legend." But Nate didn't laugh. "Then let's go see for ourselves." I should have said no. That night, we found an old maintenance entrance on the edge of downtown. The metal grate was rusted, hanging loose from its hinges. The second we stepped inside, the air changed. It was thick, heavy, like stepping into a vacuum where all sound was swallowed by the dark. The tunnels stretched endlessly, lined with graffiti and grime, the walls damp with something slick and foul-smelling. We turned on our flashlights. "If we get murdered down here, it's your fault," I muttered. Nate grinned. "Relax. It's just a tunnel." But as we walked deeper, the scratching began. It came from all around us, soft at first, then louder, a scraping, skittering sound like something crawling along the walls. I swung my flashlight toward the noise and caught a glimpse of something moving. It darted out of the beam before I could focus. Fast, low to the ground. "Did you see that?" Nate whispered. I nodded slowly. Then, the laugh came again, the same low, guttural chuckle I had heard from my drain. Nate grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." We turned to run, but the light behind us went out. Total blackness. My breath hitched. The only sound was the dripping of water somewhere deep in the tunnels. Then, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the dark, low to the ground, unblinking, watching us, and then another, and another. More and more pairs of eyes blinked open in the blackness, staring from every direction. The laughter rose into a chorus. Something moved toward us, crawling. Fast. We ran. I don't remember how we got out. 1 second, we were running for our lives. The next, we were back on the street, gasping for air. We never spoke about what we saw. But sometimes late at night, when I pass a storm drain, I swear I see eyes staring back. And if I listen closely, beneath the rush of water, I hear the laugh. I never used to be afraid of the dark. Not until I spent a night inside Fort Leavenworth. Most people know it as an old military base, one of the oldest in the United States, dating back to 1827. But what they don't tell you is that Fort Leavenworth isn't just historic. It's haunted. The prison there has held some of the most dangerous criminals in military history. Murderers, war criminals, traitors, and some say not all of them ever left. I learned that the hard way. I was assigned to the base as a civilian contractor, working on a project inside the old disciplinary barracks. The military prison had been officially decommissioned, but parts of it were still off limits, especially after dark. I should have listened. It was around 11:45 p.m. when I found myself alone in one of the upper corridors, finishing up my report. The hallways were cold, the kind of cold that settles in your bones. The overhead lights flickered, humming with that dull electrical buzz. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from the end of the hall. I assumed it was another worker. "Hello," I called out. No answer. The footsteps stopped. I stepped forward, my boots echoing on the tiled floor. I turned the corner, and the hallway was empty. A chill ran down my spine. I knew what I had heard. Someone had been there. I turned back toward my workstation, and that's when I saw the cell door. One of the old solitary confinement cells. Locked. Rusted shut. But as I passed it, something knocked. 3 times. I stepped back, heart hammering. My breath clouded in the freezing air. Then, from inside the cell, a voice whispered, "Let me out." I ran. I didn't stop until I was at the exit, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my badge to scan out. The second the door clicked open, I bolted outside. I told myself I imagined it, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then I looked down at my arm. 3 long, Deep scratches ran down my forearm, like fingernails. And when I got home that night, my phone buzzed. A notification, one new voicemail. With shaking hands, I pressed play. Static. Then a voice. Low. Hollow. Breathing in my ear. You left the door open. Some urban legends feel fake. Some feel too real. And some, you pray, aren't real at all. That's what I told myself when I first heard about the Hamburger Man. A grotesque, disfigured killer who lurks on the backroads near Hutchinson, Kansas. A man who takes his victims and turns them into his next meal. I laughed it off when my friend Jake told me about it. But after what happened that night, I don't laugh anymore. It started as a dare. A few of us were out late, driving the old dirt roads near Hutchinson, where the legend said he hunted. According to the stories, if you drove down a certain road at exactly midnight, you'd see a pair of headlights behind you, even if you were miles from another car. And if you didn't turn back immediately, you'd never be seen again. It's just a stupid story, I said as we pulled onto the road. The clock on the dashboard read 11:58 p.m. The road stretched ahead, disappearing into the dark. No houses, no streetlights, just endless miles of empty Kansas plains. See? Nothing, I muttered. Then Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. Check the mirror. I glanced up. My stomach dropped. A pair of headlights had appeared behind us. Far away at first, but moving fast. The lights grew closer. Too close. I floored the gas. 50, 60, 70. The car behind us matched our speed instantly. Who the hell is that? My friend Sam shouted. I checked the rear view again. My hands went ice cold. The headlights weren't attached to a car. They were just floating, getting closer. And then, they vanished. We skidded to a stop, our breathing ragged. The road ahead stretched on, completely empty. Then, from the darkness, a figure stepped into the headlights. Tall, thin, his skin mottled and burned, his face twisted into something that barely resembled a man. And in his hands, a meat cleaver. We screamed. I threw the car in reverse, but something slammed against the trunk. A second figure, then a third, their eyes hollow, their skin gray and rotting. Go! Go! Sam shrieked. I hit the gas. The figures vanished as we tore down the road. We didn't stop driving until we reached town, our knuckles white, our hearts racing. Nobody spoke, but when I got home, I smelled raw meat. I checked my hands. There was blood under my fingernails, and in my pocket, a rusted meat hook. I don't know how it got there, but sometimes late at night, I hear footsteps outside my window, and a voice. Fresh meat.
Some stories are just legends, or are they? Tell me, do you believe? Let me know in the comments. If you're still here,